Get out of my way, you're obstructing a pregnant woman, Cora instructed, gently caressing her belly. I pondered Cora's comment, wondering if pregnant women truly displayed a kinder expression. Observing the malice on Alicia's face, I shot a quick glance at Anthony. You can sleep in the storage room, Cora suggested, and Anthony concurred. My lifelong love for him waned instantly, though a touch of sentiment lingered, leaving me somewhat melancholic. All right then, I replied, and in response, Anthony happily took Cora's hand. Cora gazed dreamily at Anthony, and witnessing their intimacy replaced my melancholy with anger bubbling up from within. I'll leave by tomorrow, I said. Yeah, oh maybe you should stay out tonight. After all, this is now mine and Cora's home, Anthony proclaimed joyously. I nodded slightly before exiting the house, contemplating what lay ahead and cracking a smile. My name is Florence. I'm a 46-year-old housewife. Before marriage, I worked intensely, but that was over 20 years ago. Nowadays, I enjoy daily chores and sipping coffee, just an ordinary middle-aged lady. My hobby is investing, which I've been doing since before marriage. Recently, I've been earning significant dividends, treating myself to lavish hotel brunches and spa visits, leading a pretty elegant life. My husband Anthony is 40 years old, a salesman for a major company. He's gained quite a bit of weight and, frankly, has been rather smelly lately, but he's good with words given his profession. He may look big, but I love him. I felt he should probably lose some weight for health reasons, but he had this cute mascot-like appeal, so I didn't see the need to force him into a diet. Anthony and I have a daughter, Marion. She inherits Anthony's features, slim and almost model-like in beauty. Not just in appearance, she's academically top of her class and excels in sports, even making it to national competitions. She's also humble and works hard. It feels like we geese gave birth to a swan. Both Anthony and I dote on Marion, and we've often been told we're overprotective. Anthony has a bit of a weak spot for younger women, but he chose to marry an older woman like me and cherished our family, so I thought a little wandering gaze here and there was inevitable. We've lived in a condo we bought around the time Marion was born, but it was getting old, and they were considering raising the maintenance fees recently. Amidst all this, Marion decided to share an apartment near her college. At the same time, one of my relatives approached us about inheriting a now vacant house. Anthony and I decided to renovate that house and move there, but who could have known that this would cause issues between Anthony and me, which had been smooth sailing up until then. The condo we had was a 4-bedroom, including a guest room, but the new house is just 2 bedrooms. Although it's smaller than before, considering our retirement, we made it a single story, and it's been very comfortable. One of the rooms, which serves as a study and a guest room, can be divided to make an additional room for Marion if she ever comes back. Anthony started coming home late every night for work dinners and somehow always found reasons to go out even on weekends. Sleeping next to Anthony, who would come home reeking of alcohol and cigarettes, was unbearable for me. Even though we had separate beds, it was still difficult. Because of that, even though we originally shared a bedroom, I've been sleeping in the study ever since we moved. When it came time to send out moving announcements, I mailed letters to various places. Anthony isn't good with that sort of thing, so I took the initiative to send letters on his behalf to his family and relatives. As for me, since my parents have passed away, I simply wrote a brief note and sent it to friends and relatives on my mother's side. I haven't been in contact with any relatives from my father's side because of my half-sister, Alicia. Alicia is my half-sister, 14 years younger than me. When I was in 7th grade, my mother passed away, and about 6 months later, my father remarried. Cora was born to him and his new wife. At the time of their marriage, Cora was already 2 years old, so I initially thought it was a union of two families with kids. About 5 years into their marriage, my father and his new wife were involved in an accident and never returned. At their funeral, relatives from my dad's side told me that he and his new wife had been childhood friends and everyone had always thought they would end up together. However, my mom had set them up through her boss, and my dad felt he couldn't refuse, leaving his childhood friend out in the cold. To think that behind their smiles, my dad had a child with his second wife was a huge shock to me. Every time we had a family gathering, Cora's favorite foods were served. She had brand-name clothes, got the biggest room all to herself, and whenever she wanted to go somewhere, they took her immediately. Meanwhile, I was burdened with all the chores, from preparing meals to doing laundry. I had to work part-time jobs, and all the money I earned was taken away. I also had a small storage room under the stairs and had to beg for even basic necessities. By the time Cora was in elementary school, she had heard about my mom from the relatives and started looking down on me. I worked several part-time jobs to save money and finally moved out. It was impossible for me to harbor any positive feelings towards Cora, and I never told her about my marriage or that I had a child. A few weeks after moving, I was having tea and relaxing when the doorbell rang. When I answered, a man's voice mumbled "delivery," and on the screen was a person looking down. I thought maybe Anthony had ordered something and opened the door, only to be left speechless. "Oh, Alicia, why are you here?" "Hi, sis. Long time no see. Just thought I'd drop by," Cora said while wearing the hat I saw on the intercom. She wasn't a delivery person but my half-sister. Without waiting for a response, she walked past me, entered the living room, and sat down on the couch. I followed her in a hurry, stood in front of her, and looked down. "I figured you wouldn't open the door if you knew it was me, so I used the recorded voice." "That's just low, Cora. You're scary," I raised my voice. Cora reacted with exaggerated fear, but it was clear she was just putting on a show. The proof was in the smirk on her face. "I came for a visit," Cora said, speaking nonsense and getting a cold response from me. Yet, she grinned and started explaining the reason for her unexpected visit. "But sis, you never even told me where you live." "I got married, but my husband is always on business trips, and it's getting boring. Plus, once my belly starts getting big, moving around becomes a hassle, right? Everyone told me to come stay with you. Just go home. I don't even want anything to do with you." "Well, too bad. I already came here planning to stay with you." Listening to Cora's audacious words only irked me further. Under my breath, I muttered, typical of a kleptomaniac's daughter. Hearing that, my anger reached its peak. "Get out. I never want to see your face again. What's all the fuss about?" "People outside can hear you," Anthony said. I was at a loss for words, surprised by Anthony's unexpected return at such an odd hour. As I struggled to explain, Cora stood up and walked over to Anthony, intertwining her arm with his. Anthony didn't seem to mind. In fact, he looked quite pleased. "Oh, Cora's here. Welcome." My sister was being mean. "I thought it'd be nice to stay with you until the baby is born, but is that okay?" Cora asked. "Of course. I'd be thrilled. If you're okay with it, You can stay as long as you want, Anthony replied. I stood there in disbelief, silently observing the exchange between Anthony and Cora. The intimacy they shared seemed more like that of lovers than mere siblings-in-law. Anthony, what's going on? I managed to utter, but he dismissed me, accusing me of being jealous of my cute little sister. His words left me speechless, considering I had confided in him about my family situation before our marriage. We have a spare bed in the guest room. You can stay there, Anthony offered casually. Cora seized the opportunity, expressing her desire to sleep in the same room with him. Their mushy conversation gave me a headache, and as they went to the bedroom arm in arm, I couldn't shake a bad feeling. Peeking into the room after several minutes, I discovered them embracing each other, living out what felt like a dream for Cora. The baby is thrilled too, living with Daddy, Cora exclaimed, dropping the bombshell that Anthony was the father. As they kissed, I watched through the crack in the door, tears streaming down my face. From that day on, they treated me like a housemaid. I complied but silently began gathering evidence against them, contemplating divorce. One day, Cora arrogantly demanded I leave the room, claiming she, as a pregnant woman, needed space. The spiteful look on her face contradicted the gentleness usually associated with expectant mothers. Looking at Anthony for support, he sided with Cora, causing any lingering feeling I had for him to vanish. Still, a touch of sadness remained as Anthony happily took Cora's hand, sealing my decision to leave. I'll leave tomorrow, I declared, prompting an elated Anthony to suggest I find somewhere else to stay that night. This is now mine and Cora's home, he proclaimed. I simply nodded, leaving them to enjoy their laughter while they could. Stepping outside, a grin formed on my face as I contemplated what lay ahead. That night, I checked into a hotel, making plans for the next phase. The following day, I scheduled a moving company and headed to City Hall to start anew. Excitement and thoughts of newfound freedom kept me awake, but my spirit remained high. To my surprise, upon returning home, I found the moving company already there, confused as the house appeared empty. A small box with a note greeted me, containing some of my cherished belongings carelessly thrown in. Adding insult to injury, Anthony's wedding ring lay at the bottom of the box. Anger surged within me as I discovered the house in disarray, with evidence of Anthony and Cora's escapades. I led the movers to pack their belongings, then found the note on the dining table announcing Anthony and Cora's 6-day trip abroad and requesting the house be cleaned. The note mentioned that the divorce would be finalized upon their return. Anthony's utter self-centeredness left me dumbfounded, but his absence made executing my plan much easier. Secretly grateful that I had the movers pack all my belongings, I left Anthony's wedding ring on the kitchen counter before departing the house. After some contemplation, I purchased a place near Marion's University, which happened to be on sale. The one-bedroom apartment was cozy, and I cherished the solitude it offered. On the day Anthony and Cora were set to return, my phone incessantly rang. Without checking, I knew it was them. Answering with a nonchalant hello, I was met with Anthony's frantic voice demanding an explanation. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted. Remaining calm, I replied, "What do you mean, what's going on?" Anthony, fuming, informed me that the house was gone. Bursting into laughter, I explained, "Well, it was my house, and if I'm not going to live there, why keep it? We were living there, weren't we? Don't worry, everything's safely stored in a storage unit. I'll text you the location and access code." Anthony demanded I bring back the house, but I retorted that it was under my name and the money used to build it was from my investments, not a dime from him. Anthony seemed to recall his lack of involvement when the house was built, a fact he had conveniently forgotten. Claiming the baby to be his niece or nephew, Anthony pleaded for me to do something about the house as Cora was in a tough spot. I informed him that I had known about their relationship since Cora barged into our house. I had been gathering evidence, including recordings from a high-end baby monitor Cora had me buy during a fit. The monitor captured everything, even in the pitch dark. Upon revealing this, Anthony was at a loss for words. Cheerfully, I mentioned that the mailbox might have something for him. Anthony checked the mailbox and discovered a certified letter. I explained that it was about the payment and that there was one for Cora too. Unfazed, I insisted it was compensation for their betrayal. Ignoring his plea to talk to his lawyer, I ended the call. A barrage of calls followed, which I ignored. My old phone, used for evidence, wouldn't be an issue if left alone. After an hour of incessant calling, Anthony seemed to give up. The attorney reached out sounding weary the next morning. A relative from my father's side called on my new phone, likely having obtained the number from Cora. Expecting scolding, I recorded the call. The relative demanded an apology to Cora, who was pregnant, and insisted on a new house as compensation. Unyielding, I refused to apologize to the woman who had an affair with my husband. I asserted that I should apologize and pay compensation when accused of being a kleptomaniac's child. I retaliated, stating that Cora's actions were reflective of her father's betrayal. I instructed them to relay a message to Cora to never get involved with me again, though I doubted she would have the chance. Hanging up on the babbling relatives, I felt the refreshing release of pent-up emotions. I contacted my lawyer, determined to bring Cora and Anthony to justice. The thirst for revenge lingered until I witnessed the dumbfounded expressions on their faces during our discussion at the lawyer's office. Cora appeared utterly miffed, while Anthony wore a grumpy expression, showing no remorse. Surprisingly, I felt astounded rather than angry at their self-centered comments. I laid out divorce papers in front of them, accompanied by another set, the marriage license, offering a reduction in compensation if they signed the latter. Anthony snatched the pen from me and signed without hesitation. Cora, smirking, followed suit. Placing the signed documents in a folder, I gave them a big smile. "I'll submit these to the county office," I announced. Cora, with a dumbfounded expression, tried to argue, but I revealed that the divorce was already finalized in mediation the day before. Her lack of awareness stemmed from disregarding multiple summonses. As Cora and Anthony processed this information, I dropped another bombshell, the possibility of Anthony denying the father-child relationship with the unborn child. Cora stared in shock, and Anthony, realizing the potential consequences, looked pale. Between compensation and child support for another man's baby, I wished them luck. However, Anthony attempted to reconcile, citing Marion's presence. Just as he changed his tune, the lawyer's office door swung open, revealing Marion. Her harsh words stunned Anthony, freezing him in shock, while Cora, insulted, shook with rage. Marion cut ties with Anthony, expressing her intention to live with me, referring to Cora as that loose woman. Unable to respond, Cora faced Marion's verbal onslaught. I delivered the final blow, revealing Anthony's financial limitations and asserting ownership of the house and car. Cora's plan to extract money seemed to unravel, leaving her pale and stunned. As I left with my lawyer and Marion, I left them to their newfound reality. That evening, Having dinner with Marion for the first time in a while was delightful. I filed for divorce, and around the time Cora's waiting period for remarriage had passed, Anthony and Cora submitted their marriage license. The witness section bore my signature, along with Cora's ex-husband's, who had shared crucial information. News circulated that Anthony, involved in an affair with Alicia at work, got fired for misusing travel expenses for secret getaways. He now struggles with part-time jobs. Cora, taking care of the child, faces financial difficulties after being dumped by her boyfriend. Her attempt to sabotage my family had backfired. Meanwhile, Marion enjoys college life, and I've been leading a relaxed life with my stock dividends. Surprisingly, I've developed a closer bond with Cora's ex-husband, who affectionately calls me Catherine. Recently, he reached out for an important talk, making me feel a bit restless.